Welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm Kathleen Walter. Joining us is a very special guest, former left-wing radical activist turned conservative crusader, David Horowitz. He is the founder and president of the David Horowitz Freedom Center and the author of several books, including his most recent book, Reforming Our Universities. Welcome back to Newsmax TV, David.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Good to see you. Well, this week you're hosting Restoration Weekend in Palm Beach, Florida, with key players in the conservative movement as your special guests. Talk to us about Restoration Weekend, what you're doing, and just some of the exciting things that you're doing with the David Horowitz Freedom Center.
Well, this is the 16th year that we've done Restoration Weekend, and it's kind of a gathering. This year is going to be a very happy one because of the elections. Sometimes it's a licking your wounds one. And we have some, of course, very exciting speakers: Newt Gingrich, Michelle Bachmann, Pat Goodell, Pastor Hagee, on and on. And we're going to honor the man who wrote the Arizona immigration bill, Christian Adams, who resigned from the Department of Justice, which is topical again with this trial of the, this botched trial of the terrorist. And we're going to be looking towards the window of opportunity that's opened up for conservatives and for the country.
A big story today. A jury has cleared accused African embassy bomber Ahmed Golani of all but one charge in the attacks. What effect is this going to have, do you think, on the Obama administration's plans to try accused terrorists in civilian courts versus military tribunals?
It's completely over. I mean, here's a guy, this jury managed to convict him of plotting to blow up a building in which hundreds of people were killed, but couldn't convict him of killing the people. Our civilian courts are set up to protect the innocent to such an extent they also protect the guilty. And when you have a trial of a terrorist, there are national security secrets involved. That is, the way we gather intelligence has to be protected from our enemies, because if they know how we gather it, then we can't gather it that way. So you can't present the evidence in court without destroying our capabilities. And that's why you should never try a terrorist in a civilian court. And I think the Obama administration is just addicted. It's a left-wing administration, and therefore it believes America's guilty. We're the predators. And to atone for our sins, we have to show people that we will, it's not only bend over backwards, but really it's a form of national suicide. They're doing the same thing with the borders to demonstrate that we will give rights to people who want to kill us and who have no rights as American. They're not American citizens. And somehow demonstrate to the world that we've turned over a new leaf and we're not going to be the bad guys anymore. So we have an administration in Washington which comes straight out of the 1960s. Stanley Kurtz has written a really good book called Radical in Chief, which just documents all the people around Obama who made his career are people who I either knew or didn't want to know in the 60s. Radicals. It's the worst part of the 60s. The Billy Ayers, Weathermen 60s is what Barack Obama's political roots are. And this is just one of the many catastrophes they've dreamed up for us.
Let's talk about another national security issue. Critics right now are saying that those nude body scanners and those intimate pat-downs are going way too far. What is your take?
Well, of course. I mean, I had this horrific clip on television the other night was she 3 years old? This little girl terrorized and traumatized. Why are you searching a 3-year-old to begin with? And you're doing it because the left has gotten control of our government. I mean, people call it political correctness, but it's really the radical party line that we can't look for the terrorists. Who are the terrorists? They come from Middle Eastern countries. We can't even have special screening, which we should have for anybody of Middle Eastern, who comes from a Middle Eastern country through our airports. But also, you just profile who a likely terrorist would be. And you screen all those people. You don't screen old ladies in wheelchairs. You know, maybe if they're, you know, of course, well, what do I care? But you can get, if I were a news anchor, I'd be fired for saying so. But if they're wearing a veil, since terrorists have used Muslim women wearing veils to blow up people, then they should be searched. But if they're a little old lady, a Baptist lady in a wheelchair, no. Not until the Baptists, you know, start blowing up crosses and buses or something.
David, in the wake of the midterm elections, the narrative from President Obama and the Democrats has been that there is nothing wrong with our policies, that Americans have failed to understand. President Obama says he could have done a better job communicating. What do you think is Obama and the Democrats' real political problem?
The Democratic Party has been seized by a religious cult, which you can name whatever you want to name it. I like to call it neo-communism because that's what their mentality is. You can call them socialists, you can call them leftists, doesn't really matter. And their religion requires them to believe, or because of their religion, they believe that Obamacare, for example, is the door to a brave new world, to a future where everybody's going to be equal and taken care of and so forth. Clearly, I mean, the Obamacare is just the first stage. They want a single payer. They want a government-controlled, socialized medical system because they want a government-controlled, socialized system. So they can't accept the reality that the American people have rejected this, and it's never going to happen. And so they're wedded to that, and they're going to, and in their calculation, they have created enough of an army. The stimulus package, of course, went to fund the public sector totalitarian unions that we have, who are holding up the rest of the country. It's why our states are going bankrupt. And that is the army that goes to the polls and manages their electoral victories. And they figure if the economy comes back a tick or two, they can win. And then they'll go on with this. They can't accept the reality because this is not the old Democratic Party. This is not a party wedded to the idea that politics is a form of horse trading and you make compromises, you do what's pragmatic. These people see themselves as visionaries, as an army of the saints marching through the electoral process, opposed by the party of Satan, which is us. And nothing is going to cure that mentality except a colossal drubbing at the polls. They're going to have to lose for years to change.
David, given that Democrats elected to next year's new Congress are even more liberal than those currently in office and conservatives even more conservative, do you see the partisan divide growing even wider? And if so, what will Congress be able to accomplish?
The polarization, the realignment of the parties into a conservative party and a left-wing party has been taking place since the McGovern campaign in 1972. This is not a new phenomenon. It's just reached a tipping point that the Democratic Party is now a socialist party. These are left-wingers. There is a rump now. The Blue Dogs have been reduced with there's 43 votes against Pelosi, and not even all of those probably are Blue Dogs. But traditional Democrats are a tiny minority in the Democratic Party, just as earmark Republicans like Lisa Murkowski are a minority in the Republican Party. And this is going to proceed until the Democratic Party reduces itself to such a minority that it can't win, which is going to be hard to do because the Democrats have wedded people to the state. Half the country is getting a government check for something or other. So it's going to be a long process. It's not going to happen in one election.
Do you think the party will go the way of the Whigs?
Yes.
When?
Well, I said it's a long process because they have
But in this lifetime?
So much, oh yeah, I would say that. Well, this lifetime, maybe some people's lifetimes.
All right.
I wouldn't say in my lifetime.
What advice do you have for Republicans as to how they can use their newfound power?
Well, I mean, the Republican Party is redeemable because it's a much more pragmatic party, and they have to pay attention to what happened. If they were to have gone the way of the earmarks, it would be a huge setback. I mean, they would get another drubbing at the polls. If they stick to their principles, if they chart a clear course that no new taxes, they should be cutting taxes, they should be cutting the budget. I mean, I think the really significant thing is, can you cut the size of government? Can you stop the government from doing things that it shouldn't be doing and shouldn't be involved in? Will you take a firm line on borders? I mean, we're in a war, and somebody has got to defend our borders, and somebody has to defend our country. And so this trial issue and the question of what we do with terrorists when we capture them is very significant. Those are all crucial issues that Republicans have to speak with a clear and principled voice on.
David, last question. You have written extensively on the Tea Party. With the mission of taking over the House accomplished, what is next for the Tea Party movement, and just how crucial is this?
Really just what we've been talking about. Who is going to keep the Republican Party honest? Only the Tea Party. This is the Tea Party is the most important thing that's happened to the conservative movement in America and to the Republican Party since the Second World War. I mean, this is a huge development because until now, the right has not had a ground war. It has not had a political, a grassroots movement that will keep the Republican Party honest. Politicians, when they go to Washington, they've got a deal, they've got these complex constituencies. There's always this temptation that nobody's looking and we'll make these deals, they're practical and we'll get reelected. The left, what's driving the Democratic Party to the left, or what has driven it, is grassroots movements like the so-called the anti-war movement, which is really just an anti-American movement. The MoveOn.org and these socialist unions, SEIU and AFSCME. That's what holds the Democrat. Why would they re-elect Nancy Pelosi to lead them when she just led them through a disaster? Well, I mean, and Republicans are celebrating because that's the face we want on the party. That's because Pelosi controls all the money, because she is a reliable force for the, you know, I'm going to use the word, the communists in the SEIU. The Andy Stern, who was, I don't know the name of the new head of the SEIU, but these unions are run by people with a communist mentality, which Nancy Pelosi shares. So the Tea Party movement is our answer to that. And the only hope we have of keeping the Republican Party honest is that they're going to look over their shoulders. The people who are inclined to waver will look over their shoulders and notice what happened in Florida and elsewhere, the challenges that were made. And even in Alaska, you know, Joe Miller will win the next time, I have no doubt.
All right, David Horowitz, thanks so much. Okay. If folks want to find out more about you and Restoration Weekend, where can they go?
Go to frontpagemagazine.com, which is my website, or come to Florida.
All right, thanks so much. And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.